All right, welcome to the Imperfectly Inspirational Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bowman. We're so glad to have you tuning in this week. And if you haven't checked it out yet, we have went through the book of Ephesians, and it was a wonderful study. And in one of my TikToks, I actually referred to the book of Ephesians as kind of the Cliff Notes. I don't know if you're familiar with Cliff Notes and remember them back from school, but it's this great summary of the Christian life and what God has done for us and God's expectations. It's like this great shortened expectation of our lives. So if you haven't checked it out, go check out our run through of the book of Ephesians. Now, we are going to kind of go into the topical discussions again over the next several weeks, but then we're going to dive right back into the books of the Bible. I think that is a wonderful way to truly discover the Word of God. But this week, I want to talk about hopes and dreams and aspirations, or just even different wants that we have in our lives. See, we all have those things. We all have a want for a better life. We all have a want for some sort of a change. And we all know that there's usually a good way or a bad way that we can go about that. And I'll give some examples. We know that somebody who may want a big financial change in their lives, one of the bad ways that people do that is we consistently can see them going and buying scratch-off tickets and lottery tickets of any kind in hopes for a better financial situation. Or we may see somebody who is looking for love, looking for somebody just to be close to. They go out in sexual promiscuity, and we know that ends up causing a lot of heartache and stress and even potential disease. And we also know that there's people that, they may have just a lot of depression or a lot of issues going on in their lives, and they're hoping for just a better tomorrow, a way to be happy. And what they end up doing is they drown that with alcohol and drugs. See, people constantly want something better in life or to get out of a situation that is unpleasant. But we tend to take a road that we may think is easier, or we take a road that we think that the odds may be in our favor to better our situation. And we tend to look away from the reality of the truth of what can really save us. And I want to read today a story of a man who was doing just that. We're going to turn to John chapter 5, verse 1. This is about a man who was living a life of sickness, looking in the wrong direction. Verse 1, it says, "After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now, there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, in Aramaic called Bethesda." So let's give you a rundown on this pool. This pool that was called Bethesda originally had a different name. I couldn't find the original name of this pool, but based on the stuff that I could read, this pool actually was a big pool for the wealthy of the area. Think of it as kind of the country club for the people back in the day. All the wealthy people would go there and hang out, and this was supposedly some of the purest water around. And that is what this pool was. But now if we continue on, it says, that verse finishing, it says, which has 5 roofed colonnades. And verse 3 says, in these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. So what happened with this pool is this was a grand pool. It had big shaded areas. These colonnades were big places where people would just lay out and relax in the shade, because remember, this is an arid, very hot desert climate that they're in. So these people would go and relax underneath that. Well, eventually this water, there was a good flow of water coming through there. It dried up, and there was no fresh water flowing in or out. There wasn't enough to really make things happen, so this pool became stagnant. What happens in that type of environment when there's no movement in the water and it just sets? Well, it becomes nasty and dirty and full of all kinds of junk. So needless to say, the wealthy people said, we're done with this, and now this became a place of people who were sick. And let's continue reading here. It says, one man there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there, and he knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, do you want to be healed? And the sick man answered, sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. and while I am going, another steps down before me. Now listen, why would this guy be talking about the water being stirred up? Well, it happens to be that what would happen at that pool is there was this angel that would come and it would stir up the water. Now, when you think stirred up, you think maybe some movement or, you know, somebody could throw a rock in there. You think that, well, the water's stirred up, right? No, this verb of stirred is talking about a violent movement. You knew this angel was there. It wasn't you just looking at the water hoping for movement. You knew this angel was there. And whoever was the first person to get into this pool after the water was stirred was completely healed. So all of these people would go to this pool and lay there in hopes that when this water got stirred up, they would go in and they would be the first one to be healed. Now, I go back, and I'm not picking on you if you like the lottery. This is not by no means. This is just the best example. There was a chance that you could get healed, but the odds were very slim that you would be the first person in that pool, just like your odds of striking it big in the lottery are that, right? It's very slim odds that it could happen. It's not saying that it wouldn't happen, but it is saying that very unlikely that you're going to be the one to get in there. And this is the kind of the similarities that we're looking at is we have so many people in our world today who are looking at a way to fix their problems, who are looking at a way to get out of whatever situation they're in, but in the wrong way. So this guy, he saw that there was a glimmer of hope. He saw that there was something that could possibly happen. So he said, I am going to stay here and wait until I can potentially get my shot of being healed. Well, while he was laying there, Jesus happens to come and see him laying there at this pool. So by this time, Jesus had been around doing miracles and performing miracles, and Jesus was in his presence. Jesus had walked by all of these people at the pool. Now, would these people have heard of Jesus? We don't really know. We don't know what the line of communication was at the people at this pool. If they ever left, more than likely they didn't really leave because they didn't want to miss out on that. So there's a chance he may not have known Jesus at the time, or there's a chance he may have not have recognized who he was. But either way, Jesus was walking by all of these people who had every opportunity to even speak to him or to look at him and say, hey, do you know anything about when the water might be stirred? Do you know anything about healing? Do you know anybody that could heal me? They were not even focused on any other opportunity of being healed but that pool. And Jesus sees this man over there and he approaches him and he says, do you want to be healed? Just a simple question. He doesn't go up and introduce himself and say, I am Jesus, I'm going to heal you, or I am Jesus, let me show you what I can do. He just says, do you want to be healed? And I find it interesting that this man, his response is not yes. I don't know about you, but if I was waiting for 38 years to be healed from an ailment and somebody said, do you want to be healed? I'd say yes. But this man was so focused on the only thing that he thought was going to help him, or the only thing that he's ever tried to help him, that his answer was, sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I am going, another steps down before me. See, the goal in our life is not to be so focused on one solution that doesn't work, one solution that can't give us the answers. We know the only answer is Jesus Christ. And you may say, well, Chris, if I follow Jesus, am I going to get healed tomorrow? It depends. Depends on if Jesus wants to heal you. Depends on what the situation is in your life. I don't ever want to come on here and guarantee that somebody's going to get $1 million or be cured of cancer. We don't know what God's plan is, but I can tell you, God can provide whatever healing that you need in your life. He can provide the healing of that circumstance of a bad job. He can provide the healing of the circumstance of financial difficulties. He can provide the healing of sickness. It is all in His time and His way, but it is the fact that we have to depend on Jesus and turn away from these other options and go to Jesus. But what happens, though, in our lives when we get that healing and when Jesus says, you know what, I want to give you this. I want to grant you this new job opportunity. I want to grant you an opportunity to make a difference in your life. What happens? So we see as we move on, and at once the man was healed. This is verse 9. Verse 8, and Jesus said to him, get up and take your bed and walk. So he didn't give Jesus the yes or no. He went on saying, you know, Jesus, I have nobody to take me to the water. Well, Jesus says, listen here, get up your bed and walk. And at once he was healed. And what did he do? He took up his bed and he walked. So we got to understand the first thing, if we're looking for a difference in our lives, if we're looking for that blessing, that moving on from a situation, or just that healing from actual sickness, we have to understand that first we have to look in the right direction. That if the things of life that you've been doing for years and years and years have not been working, you got to realize there's only one answer, and that is Jesus. You say, well, Chris, I've been praying for years and years and years for this situation to change in my life, but I got a question to ask you today. And this goes to where the second part of this is. Jesus told this man to to take up his bed and walk. Has Jesus told you to take up your bed and walk because you're healed and you decided to lay there? See, this man, if he did not get up and follow the directions of Jesus Christ, do you know, I guarantee you, he would have never been changed. He may have been healed, but he wouldn't have seen the difference in his life because he would have stayed there and laid there. He would have been with the sickness. He would have been with the dirty, filthy water, still waiting for it to be stirred up so he could go into it. Even though he was healed, he would have been in the same situation that would have never brought him peace. It would have never brought him the ability to go out and, be a good contribution to society. All because he stayed. That doesn't mean the healing's not there, because when Christ says you're healed, but you have to move out of that sick environment. You have to move away from those friends who are holding you back. You have to move away from the refrigerator if you're trying to lose weight. You have to move away from the alcohol and drugs if you're continuously depressed. You got to move away from the lotto tickets if your finances are in despair. Listen, when Jesus says you're healed, take your bed up and walk, you got to move away from that situation. So we have to first make sure we're looking to Jesus. We're fully focused on Jesus in our lives and trusting in Him to make that difference in our lives. But then once we get that word from Jesus, once we get that understanding and that clarity in our lives, we have to be willing to do the work that He has said to do and move away from that situation to finalize that healing, to get the results of that healing, because it is there. If He says it's there and He says to take up your bed and walk, move away from your situation. That is how you get the full results of that healing. So I want to ask you today, friend, where are you looking? Are you looking in the same old places that you've looked before in life for that opportunity to advance in your career, for that opportunity for financial health, for that opportunity for healing of sickness? Whatever it may be in your life, make sure that the only place that you're looking is to Jesus, and that you're going to Jesus with an open mind and an open heart to be able to listen and follow His instructions, because I tell you, He doesn't want anything bad for you. Jesus wants you to grow. He wants you to grow in Him. He wants you to be better in His Word. And if He says to take up your bed and walk, my friend, you need to do that. That is how you're going to see glory on the other side of the situation. I hope this has been helpful to you. I hope this has been able to help you move from one situation to the better side of it, to see Jesus fully as the answer to everything that we need. And if you got a friend or family member that needs to hear this, definitely send this along to them. I hope that this could be a blessing to anybody that listens to it. And folks, go out there this week, make sure to turn your eyes upon Jesus, as the song says, because that's the only way. Well, folks, I hope you have a wonderful week, and I love each and every one of you.